So on this video, I'm going to go over what I learned taking a 3,000 mile trip in this camper. We just got back, and while this stuff's still fresh in my mind, I'm going to go over a few things because it is different when you take a long trip. So I'm going to go over a few things, and hopefully this helps you out if you decide to take you a long trip across the country. Of course, it looks somewhat like a bomb went off in my camper because, hey, it's been 11 days on the road. So we're unpacking now, and just want to go over a few things. Whenever we do our local trips, we don't have much problems with the cabinets coming open. But overall, we had a pretty good trip. But a few things we did notice. We don't secure our cabinets for the most part, most time. But this drawer here did come open twice during our trip, which out of 11 days, I guess that wasn't too bad. It never did come loose or anything. Our biggest problem was this upper cabinet. It did pop open on 3 different occasions, and all the stuff spilled out of it. We did temporarily fix it with a rubber band here, but eventually we're going to have to get a bungee to hook that up. And I think what happens is these doors, they snap in place, but it loosens up over time. And I think just the banging around was just a lot for it. And so we haven't had to have any problem with these over here, and hopefully we won't in the future, because most of this stuff actually sets in and it hits that little ledge so it doesn't shift out. So didn't have any problem with that. Into the bathroom, we had several issues in here. One of them was we went down this really big bumpy road, and I'll show you here. We went into a BLM area and banged around quite a bit, and hit the big holes, and the whole camper kind of shifted from side to side. And so what happened on one of our cases is we had water in our commode here, and we always keep a little bit in there, but we had, I guess, I don't know, maybe an inch or 2 in there, and it actually sloshed all the way out, and this whole floor area right here was all wet. And so that was something we had to clean up a mess, and we didn't have any more trouble with it, only on that one time. So just if you're going in a boondocking type setup where the camper's shifting from side to side, that became an issue. So just something to know about there if you're going into a rough area. Another problem we had was when we came in here to put on our water pump one time, it just wouldn't. It kept on running and running and running, would not pressurize. And we finally found what the problem was. You can see we let this shower head kind of fall down and just kind of bang around, because it would stay up here for a little while, but then eventually it would come back down. But what would happen is, if you can actually look over there, you'll see the water miser. It would actually pull this water miser up, and it was allowing air to enter the system. So it's just something to know. If you can't get that pump to prime or pressurize, you want to make sure this is all the way down, and that cuts off that water miser, because it was allowing air to come in there. So that's very important to know that. Now we have the Dometic refrigerator, the gas heat refrigerator. Some of the newer campers have the 12 volt. So when I'm talking about the battery issues, I'm going to be talking about this 12 volt, because we actually have a 100 amp hour battery, and we use the whole time we were out for at least 3 days at a time, and our solar would pop it up. It would go down to about 83%, and that's using the CPAP with the hydration on the CPAP. And we were using lights. We were using pretty much what we wanted to in here, but it would only drop to about 80 to 83% every night. And then by the time we woke up in the morning, the sun was hitting the solar, and it was already back up to 100%. So we had no problems whatsoever. Again, if you had the 12 volt refrigerator here, I would definitely say you're going to need 200 amp hours at the very least. Maybe not upgrade your solar panel, because the newer ones come with the 180 watt, I think it is, and ours is the 100 watt. But definitely the battery upgrade to a 200 amp hour. But in our case, 100 amp hour worked great, and our refrigerator kept everything good and cold. We did make sure everything was relatively level every night, and it travels pretty level, so we didn't have an issue with that at all. As far as stuff banging loose and getting loose and jiggly, we had a little bit of trouble with this TV. It actually has a snap here. This would pop loose, and we'd find it banged around like this a little bit. So we just had to make sure that's popped in. Not really a problem. We did have trouble with our light here. it did loosen up, and we had to end up taking the frame loose and retightening the clamps because it was just jiggling too much, I guess, and it finally loosened up. That's important as you're taking a big long trip, is to make sure all your screws and bolts are tightened down, and just check them periodically throughout the trip. On the outside, I noticed that when we were going down the road, that these little tabs will come back and pop off of here. I did this, retighten it several times. Make sure that this cover is on to where the hinges are in the front. That way, if the wind does, if it's turned the other way, the wind might catch it and just rip that clean off if it was coming loose. But again, you want to come out here every once in a while and check out these screws, make sure they're back in place and tightened down. But I noticed that came loose several times through our trip. One of the things we noticed, which may not be the same for everybody, but we noticed that we didn't eat near as much food on the road as far as cooking food in the camper as that we thought we would. We obviously, some places that we didn't have any place to eat, and we were in place and we had to cook something. We had some stuff for that, but we actually bought enough stuff for the first 3 days and planned to go back to Walmart to buy more, and found that 3 days worth of food actually got us through the whole trip, because we were eating a lot of restaurants and different things. So you might want to look at your trip and think about the time traveling on the road, and if you're really going to have the time, if you're going to be tired when you get to camp, if you just want to grab a quick fast food if it's available. If it's not going to be available, then of course you'll have to have some food, but just kind of keep that in mind when you're doing a long trip, that you don't really want to cook all 3 meals every day, because it can be a pretty daunting task to do when you're traveling a lot of hours each day. So just something to think about. One other thing we had when we were driving down the road is these stabilizer jacks. You kind of put them up, and I used an electric drill, and I didn't really let this one go all the way up, and it had drifted down a little bit. It wasn't bad, and I caught it at a gas station when we were gassing up. Of course, you gas up quite a bit, because the pulling the camper behind you, it gets about 12 miles a gallon in my case. Just as I take off on my travels, I used to try to remember a few things to check on every day. I had a tendency to leave the freshwater cap off, and luckily I had this lanyard, so I didn't leave it behind. Just make sure that things are all secure, all your doors. Make sure you go through every one of your windows, because if you leave one of these windows cracked, it's going to shatter on you as you're heading down the road. So that's something key to remember. My Fantastic fan, I think I left it on one time, and I guess you could travel with it open, or even leaving it running. Of course, that runs your battery down, and but I'd rather have mine closed up and turned off, so I did leave that on one time. One other thing I found, that I don't normally lock these doors. Well, sometimes I do. It depends on the camping trip and how safe I feel like I'm around, but I lock these doors continuously, because I kept a lot of battery chargers, and got my lithium battery in there, and a drill. So I locked this, and so this kind of got really stiff on me, so this needed to be oiled. I'm gonna bring a little bit of lube with you when you take a big trip, and make sure you lube these up a little bit, because this one got to where it wasn't turning real well. So just something to know. Again, if you're using those little latches a lot, you're going to need to put a little bit of dry spray lube or something on that, or just maybe even a drop of oil in there. Well, I hope these problems don't discourage you from taking long trips, and hope these tips help you out. But that's about all I got for this RV short, and we'll see you again on another one.